Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All right. This is a happy day. This is a happy day. My name is Anna L. Alston. I am the superintendent of schools here at Hamilton Central School, and I'm proud to greet you and welcome you to our Hall of Honor ceremony this afternoon. This is my third time to this event, and each year I am more impressed by the people and the stories that accompany the people into the Hall of Honor. Before we go any further, I'd like to recognize the people who made today happen, the people who made today a special day. So if you are on the All-Class Reunion Committee, or the Hall of Honor Committee, or the HCS custodial team, would you please just rise so that we can recognize you for your hard work and efforts, please? Thank you so much. That, my friends, is the power of partnership. This day doesn't happen without so many people coming together and working together to make sure that we recognize the rich tradition of the wonderful people who have passed through the doors here at Hamilton. On June 24th, HCS had its 119th commencement ceremony. That history has given HCS a long time to build a reputation as a great school. Ladies and gentlemen, would you agree that HCS is a great school? This many people agreeing on one thing. We're doing well, folks. HCS is a great school, but what makes a school great? I had an old boss, well, he's not an old boss, but a former employer told me it comes down to PPF. People, programs, and facilities. The focus is always on people first. People include the students, the parents, teachers, administrators, community members, volunteers. Pick the title, it really doesn't matter. It comes down to the service of the people, doesn't it? We're here today because HCS has a tradition of honoring a few people who are very special who have graced the halls of HCS. My role here is to facilitate the event, and your role is to sit back and relish in the accomplishments, pride, and joy of HCS graduates who have made or are making a positive mark in lives of people today. Thank you so much, and we will begin with our first presenter, Mary Caswell, who will be speaking about our honoree, James Craig Dickinson. Mary?
All right, I can hold it. Wow. Class of 67. That's what I said when I heard you were celebrating your 50th year reunion this year. And then I said another wow when Craig asked me to speak on his behalf today. I feel so honored to be here for this occasion. The Hamilton Central School class of 1967 has always had a very special place in my heart and in my memories over the years. In fact, I still have a poem written by Johnny DeLuke and a collage that you gave me your senior year, which has made many moves with me through the past 50 years. And whenever I would come across it, I would stop and remember all the good times and make a decision that this is one thing I could not get rid of. And to me, Craig is one who personifies the greatness of your class. It has been a few years since we were all a part of the goings-on at Hamilton Central School. Upon my request, Craig updated me on some of his life during the intervening years. And he happened to mention an article I had written for the Mid-York Weekly his senior year, which I remember doing because he had spent the entire year writing about everyone else's accomplishments and never mentioning his own. This article refreshed my memory of Craig's dedication to the school in so many ways. From writing the weekly Mid-York Weekly article, to his prowess on the baseball team, his job as business manager of the yearbook, leaving an almost unheard of surplus to the following year's class, and his leading role as Jonathan Brewster in Arsenic and Old Lace, among other activities. I also received a bio to help me write this introduction, but before I received this information, I decided to do a computer search to see if I could find out anything about Craig in the intervening years. I Googled his name, eliminated several other Dickinsons, and found the one who lived in Wells, Maine. Soon I was into a website that professed to find out about people. And before I knew it, I was into this multi-step search of criminal acts, arrests, debts owed, and all sorts of rather sordid information which I certainly had never thought of. I'm sure you'll be happy to know, Craig, that the cursor kept crossing the screen at a very fast pace, obviously not making any hits. I let this run its course and came to the final stage, where I was then warned that I would soon find out things I might wish I had never known about this person, and that I had to promise I would not harass, stalk, or cause embarrassment to this person as a result of the report I was about to receive. By then, I had decided that this was not the website I hoped it to be, and clicked it off. However, I must say that before it signed off, I did notice that the computer gave you an overall ranking of being a good person, the highest ranking you could get. I'm sure that all of you who knew Craig back in high school, and all who know him today, will fully concur with this ranking. I would now like to read some of the highlights of Craig's life after graduating from Hamilton Central School. After receiving his Bachelor of Arts degree from Colby College and his Master's in the Art of Teaching from the University of Maine, Craig taught elementary school for 15 years. An early advocate of computers in the classroom, he presented workshops for teachers at state, regional, and national conferences. He also taught courses in math, computer, and classroom management as an adjunct instructor for the University of Maine and the Lesley University Graduate School. Craig's passion for athletics began with playing basketball and baseball for Hamilton. After playing college baseball, Craig umpired high school and college games, served 7 years as an assistant high school football coach, and ran dozens of road races, twice running the Boston Marathon. Craig was the first to implement Odyssey of the Mind in Maine. He coordinated regional and state tournaments and presented training workshops. Craig has written over 40 magazine articles and portions of books on educational computing. In 1987, he and his wife, Paula, authored Brainstorming Activities for Creative Thinking, which sold more than 25,000 copies in 3 countries. Craig ran his own educational software company for 26 years, serving schools in 40 states. For his many contributions on the use of computers in the classroom, he was honored with Maine's Friend of Technology Lifetime Achievement Award. Craig also mentioned in his bio that he felt very privileged to be raised in Hamilton. He particularly mentioned his beloved parents, Katie and Jim Dickinson, for their influence on his life, and several teachers, including Norma Edding, Marge Schaefer, Dick Lenhart, Leo Kiley, Kermit Ann Merrick, Bruce Lamb, Ray House, Jim Laskar, and others who he remembered as dedicated mentors who always treated their students with whom they worked with respect. I lost track of Craig over the years, but I now know that he went into just the field and profession I would have hoped, education. As a teacher myself for 35 years, I know the qualities of people who make that special difference in the lives of children. and Craig represents the highest of these qualities. Those whose lives he touched as a teacher were very lucky kids, and those whose classrooms he touched with his business and publications, I know greatly benefited from his dedication to enhancing the field of education. Before I finish, I would like to take a minute to ask any of the class of 1967 here to stand. I know Craig would want you to be a part of the celebration, and I want to add my appreciation to all of you who were such an important part of my earliest years as a teacher. And if I may, I would also like to add that the same is true for those of you here from my very first class, the class of 1972. Anybody here? Well, they were celebrating their 45th reunion. You were the very best class a first-year teacher could have had to begin her teaching career. In conclusion, I am so very proud to introduce Craig to receive this award. He is exactly the type of person needed in the field of education and in the world in general. And I'm sure that all who knew him here in Hamilton 50 years ago, and all who have known him since, will concur that this award is so totally and richly deserved.
Well, Mary, I thank you for those very kind remarks, and it's a special day and a special joy to be reconnected with you. I know my classmate Johnny D and I were so glad that you were here. We were so fortunate that you came to town for our junior and senior years, and maybe a little more. Johnny D's poem that Mary mentioned, the key line that I remember is, "You were more than just a teacher," and you sure were. You were at every concert, every game. You were the advisee to many groups, including Alameda. You stayed up late on many a chaperone night, and we just adored you. And I thank you very much for being willing to introduce me. As I was looking at what I might say today, it occurred to me that every major theme in my professional life goes right back to Hamilton, where I was raised. And the one story which I've told many times through the years was as an 8th grader. For in my day, every 8th grade boy, and then it was only boys, were required to take Mr. George Halloran's class in agriculture. And he was wonderful. He, for many decades, really had an outstanding program here, an award-winning FFA program. I can still remember to this day the units that Mr. Halloran had. He would get us in a school bus and take us to judge cattle. We had to test milk. Tractor maintenance was big. And we had to weld. And what I realized very early as an 8th grader was that a lot of my classmates had already developed some pretty outstanding mechanical and problem-solving skills. And it wasn't any surprise to me, in being back to my 50th reunion, to see that Lionel Caswell had become just a crackerjack mechanic with an awful lot of responsibility in the area. Or our football star Arnie Rollins went on to be a tremendous mason in the area. And the day I remember very vividly was the day I held my arms out and George Halloran put a welding torch into my hands. And looking at me and seeing the deer in the headlight look in my eyes, and the obvious that I didn't know what I was doing and couldn't do this, he yanked down the mask, lit the torch, and said to me, "You can do this. You can learn to do this." Well, I thought of George many years later, about 18 years later, as I was just finishing my 10th year of teaching 4th grade in Orono, Maine, about ready to start my 11th year. And I was ready to go. I'd come off a terrific teaching year. My room was ready. I was just raring to go until the superintendent summoned me to his office 3 days before school opened to tell me that no, I wouldn't be in that classroom this year. I was going to be running a gifted and talented program in 3 schools, and to which I immediately threw up my arms and said, "But Joe, my bulletin boards are up." I always struggled with bulletin boards. I tried to convince him also that, I'm not sure I really believe in this concept of gifted and talented education. To which he said, "Well, you need to educate yourself." I said, "But each one of these schools has these brand new Radio Shack computers. I know nothing about computers." "So learn," he says. Great, another George Howley. Well, I did learn. And early on in my reading about gifted and talented education, I learned that Jonas Salk had been a product of a gifted and talented program. And it occurred to me that if one Jonas Salk came from a gifted and talented program, then my little program in Central Maine deserved my full attention. And computers just took off. The kids were just enraptured by them and delighted greatly in showing me what they could do. But one thing Mary alluded to goes right back to Hamilton, and that is that I had this very special opportunity to go to the Mid-York Weekly every week and work with a wonderful man named Westcott B. Phoenix, who we wrote and rewrote. And I learned so much in that year of having the deadlines to put in that it was something that stayed with me my entire life. So when these computers came out in the early 1980s, which was 15 years before the internet hit, a slew of magazines developed, and they were hungry for material. And I had the confidence to just send in articles. And I also gave back. I had been encouraged here at Hamilton High, even all through the grades of writing. And I was able to encourage my students, and I was really pleased that in the next 4 years, I had 27 students who actually published as well, from small little tidbits to full-length articles. And it was computers that also gave me that opportunity to work, as Mary said, in teacher education, to present at conferences, to work in adjunct. And it was my turn to encourage teachers who had no small amount of resistance to computers coming into their classroom, that you can do this, you can learn to do this. Now, from teachers like Mary and Dick that modeled for me, I learned that a teacher's job did not end at 3 o'clock. That for a community, especially a small school community, to be vibrant, you needed people to be involved and teachers to be involved all the time. So I remember very vividly at the end of my first year of teaching, I was talking to our physical education instructor, and I was telling him what a tremendous opportunity and joy it was for me, and especially in retrospect, to play basketball and baseball in my high school. What a privilege it was to represent my school on the interscholastic field. 2 days later, he comes back to me and said, "Say, I just nominated you to be assistant football coach next year." I never played football. I was a baseball player. He said, "Close enough. You can learn." Well, I had 7 years of wonderful time coaching football. And also in the spring, I would umpire, but I would also be involved in youth baseball. And I got my first youth baseball job here in Hamilton thanks to Dick Lenhart back in the summer of 1969. So when I was a first-year teacher, I went to the town recreation director where I lived and said, "Gee, I'd love to take a team." I took a team and I came back to it at the end of that season because it was a league with no walks. The batters, you either hit the ball or you struck out. Well, 75% of my outs had been by strikeouts. And I said, gee, these kids are a little young. Is there something else we could do? And he came up with the idea, which we started the next year, of T-ball. And we also included girls. This is 1973, and that was somewhat rare. Well, it was rough for the first couple of years. He took one team, I took another. But it's still there. It's still going, and it was a lot of fun. My winters, though, I was involved in coaching which did not involve a ball, and that was Olympics of the Mind. And that, again, goes right back to Hamilton. I learned about this program that had 5 to 7 kids competing on the athletic model. They had a coach who was either a parent or often a teacher. The program is now called Odyssey of the Mind, or OM. And I was just enraptured by it, thought it was a can't miss. But in those days, this was 1982, I was one of only 2 schools where it was going in the state of Maine. So, like George Halloran, I got a bus and I put kids on it. And we went down to Camden, Maine and had our first tournament. Well, what we did was we sent out the word. We advertised it. We had wanted other teachers, administrators, come see what this is all about. And many did and became very involved in that program as the years went on. I then went to conferences, principals conference, superintendent's conferences, and did trainings. And within 3 years, the nonprofit statewide organization, which I was a volunteer coordinator of at that time, we were the 6th largest organization in the world. And that also presented a problem or a possibility for going on to write. Coaches were clamoring for materials. And so Paula and I came through and actually did publish the book, which we had terrific anecdotes about. We were amazed to hear that it was in every middle school in the city of Detroit, Michigan, that it was used in Canada and Australia, and it was very satisfying to us. Olympics of the Mind continues to flourish, but the courage, I suppose the motto of Hamilton is courage to try. The courage to try, a national publisher to publish our book, came out of the fact that I had the opportunity to work here, to write, to work at the Mid-York Weekly at Hamilton High School. The idea that this was absolutely a wonderful program unquestionably came from the fact that I was able to compete on teams here in Hamilton, and that was wonderful. I am actually representative of a host of educators that have come out of Hamilton Central School. My boyhood playmate and friend Gary Etchett taught 31 years in Madison, started the golf program there, was a longtime coach. Elizabeth Jerger taught 36 years in the surrounding schools and continues to substitute, contribute in that way. My old teammate, Dana Chapman, 29 years, a principal. The last several years, he came back home. And there are many. I'm just mentioning a few. But also, getting back to that courage to try, we also seem to produce a certain amount of entrepreneurs. And out of my class, I immediately think of Steve Hangst and Greg Magonis and Chris Jerger, who in this area have started their own business. So after 15 years, I did continue and on with my own business and had a wonderful career there. And there was just one particular incident which really, I think, finished out my career. My last 7 years, I ran the Association of Computer Technology Educators of Maine. It was a nonprofit. And in 2002, in my state of Maine, our very enlightened governor and visionary educator, Angus King, had presented every 7th grader with an Apple laptop. And that continued into 8th grade the year following that. Well, 4 years after that, in 2006, I found myself in a Portland building meeting with two Apple executives and Angus King, and they had a problem. And the problem was Apple was willing to sell these 30-some-odd thousand computers to school districts at $40 a piece. The old computers, they were going to sell at $40 a piece. They needed an upgrade and they needed some extra memory, but how would they handle that? We have no BOCES in our state. Everything is locally controlled. So Angus King said to me, could the staff of your nonprofit handle this complete, make sure we get the memory, do the negotiations, do all the billing and advertising, and make sure this gets done. And I pointed out to him that the entire staff of my organization, me, was there. And he looked at me and smiled and said, yes, but you can do this. Yes, Mr. Halloran, Angus. But the last 3 days, I've had an extraordinary number of conversations. And one of the best was with Alan Morgan, 66, who happens to be standing in the back. And what we've been trying to figure out is, what is it? What is it about Hamilton that makes it such an extraordinary place to grow up? And Al, I think, hit it about as well as anybody when he said, we haven't really hit on the answer to that. But this place certainly does have a lot of magic. I attribute my professional and personal happiness right to what happened here at Hamilton Central and growing up here. The great scientist Isaac Newton, at the end of his life, was given a testimonial ceremony, and he stood up and said, if I have accomplished anything along the way, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. So I'd just like to close by thanking my giants, the wonderful, bright, athletic, clever, creative, fun kids I grew up with here in Hamilton. The extraordinary teachers we had who continually gave us the courage to try and showed us that in an active community, you get involved beyond just the classroom. My parents, Katie and Jim Dickinson, who realized long ago that this was a wonderful community and a special place to raise a child. And my giant of giants, my wife Paula, who taught Maine first graders for 36 years and gives me joy every day. I am deeply humbled and honored to be here, and I thank you.
Thank you so much. Very inspiring. And you mentioned gifted and talented. At one point, I was identified as gifted and talented in the early 80s. By the time I left high school, it wore off. So here I am. I'd like to recognize anyone in the audience who has been honored or inducted into our Hall of Honor. Would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you so much. We should recognize the quality people that we are surrounded by. Next, we'll ask Sam Mirabido to introduce our Hall of Honor inductee, Charles Rathbone. Thank you. One, here we go.
How did you know how to pronounce my name correctly? Oh, okay, great, okay. So I'm really excited to be here today to introduce you to one of this year's Hamilton Central School Hall of Honor inductees, Charlie Rathbone. As excited as I am, I'm even more honored to be able to share with you the incredible accomplishments that Charlie has achieved in his life. The last time I was on this stage was in June of 1960 during our graduation ceremony. The last time I spoke on this stage was in September of 1959, when I made my first and only political speech in an unsuccessful campaign to be elected onto the student council. Now, if you do the math real quick, that's 57, 58 years ago. But I've known Charlie longer than that. I've known him since kindergarten. We share 70 years of friendship. And I'd like to explain how important that friendship is based upon what I've sacrificed today to be here. I've given up tickets in the shed at Tanglewood for tonight's performance by James Taylor. Charlie, that's a sacrifice. So who's Charlie Rathbone? Allow me to put in play a few words that I feel define who he is. Leadership, champion, achieving excellence, commitment, innovation, principled, versatile, caring, dedication, a humanitarian. You might not hear these words again in my introduction, but you will definitely be able to align these words with his accomplishments. When one of our high school coaches, Larry Kazaznak, learned that Charlie had been selected to the Hall of Honor, he wrote the following comments in an email. There is a uniqueness and inspiration about the HCS class of 1960 that says very clearly, friends are forever. It is only fitting that Charlie will receive this award. He represents so many of the qualities that make your 1960 class so special. Charlie is well-grounded, he's bright, he's articulate, with a keen sense of humor and a sincere concern for others. The family that Coach K talks about is here in force today. There are 14 classmates in attendance today, which represents 40% of the classmates who are still with us from our graduating class. That's pretty amazing. According to the rules of induction into the Hall of Honor, you must have a consistent commitment to excellence and have achieved many accomplishments in athletics, academics, and the arts during your years at Hamilton Central School and beyond. Okay? And beyond. But let's start with how Charlie met these levels of excellence while at Hamilton Central School. Athletics. He was a 4-year member of the track team, participating in sprints, relays, shot put, and discus. He was a 4-year starter on the varsity football team, serving as co-captain in both his junior and senior year. And in his senior year, the team was the Center League champion. Probably the highlight, Charlie had a lot of highlights in his football career, but one of the most important one was in a classic game against New York Mills when Charlie, he was a lineman, intercepted a pass and raced 75 yards untouched into the end zone for the clinching touchdown. Were you that fast? I outran everybody.
You're a good reporter.
Okay. He also was named to the Central New York State All-Star team in his senior year. Let's move on to academics. He was a member of the Honor Society. He was a 4-year member of the Student Council, serving as president in his senior year. He was named to, he received a Syracuse University Citizenship Award, and he earned a Regents College Scholarship. Arts. A member of the band and orchestra for all 4 years. He played the sousaphone, the trumpet, and the French horn at different times. He was on the mixed chorus, in his junior and senior year. He was a 4-year member of the Maskers, highlighted by having one of the lead roles in the Maskers presentation of Our Town. Now, if you have not seen Our Town, put it right at the top of your to-do list. You will be overwhelmed. Now let me talk a little bit more about Our Town. As tough a guy as you might imagine Charlie is because of his athletic prowess, there is a true sentimental, emotional side to him that he has that. Just ask him what happens when he reminisces about Emily Webb's final monologue in the play. The Mid-York Weekly said there was not a dry eye in the auditorium when Emily, played by Pam Wass, a classmate of ours who no longer is with us, performed her magic on stage. I can tell you, there's not a dry eye on Charlie's face right now whenever he reminisces about that scene. With this listing, I can't conceive of a venue at HCS that Charlie did not impact while he was here. So let's move on post-high school, because his search for excellence did not stop upon graduation. Charlie received a BA in psychology from the University of Rochester in 1964. While at Rochester, he played 4 years of varsity football and was captain of the team in his senior year. He maintained a high, rigorous academic schedule, while also serving a leadership role in the fraternity and participating in student government. He was inducted into the University of Rochester's Honor Society. It was at Rochester that he began the important work of recognizing and developing his social conscience. Charlie continued his education at Syracuse University, earning an MA, or Master's in Urban Teaching, in 1965, and a PhD in teacher education in 1970. He says he fell in love with teaching during his first summer at Syracuse. The social justice orientation of the Urban Teacher Preparation Program was the defining environment for him in his professional preparation. Upon graduation, he accepted a position in the Human Learning and Development Department at the University of Vermont. He was part of the elementary education team at UVM for 39 years. 39 years, that's a long time. Early in his career at UVM, he conceived of, developed, and co-directed the American Primary Experience Program, APEX, which focused on the preparation of teachers for primary multi-age grades. APEX won the Distinguished Achievement Award as the outstanding teacher program, education program in the country in 1976. From a leadership standpoint, Charlie twice was the department chair. In his retirement, he serves on the board of the Vermont Interfaith Action, a grassroots organizing group representing over 6,000 Vermont families. VIA is dedicated to pushing for systemic change in education, health reform, affordable housing, and healthcare, so as to better the lives of everyday citizens. He just doesn't seem to quit. He just keeps reaching. While he was performing at the top of his game at UVM, he excelled in the art of family. His beautiful wife, Ann, is with us today. Charlie has 4 children, 2 of whom were adopted through the Methodist Mission Home in San Antonio, Texas, in a program titled Room for One More. Again, his arms are always out there reaching for people. So let's take a deep breath. Oh, what a life. Do you think he meets the original listed criteria? Yeah, I do. With that, I would like to formally introduce you to a very dear friend, and one who I admire beyond recognition, Dr. Charles Rathbone.
Hi. Who was that he was talking about? It's odd to hear all that in one package. So way back in April, I was walking on Church Street in Burlington, Vermont, the town in which Ann and I live, to meet a friend for coffee. It was a bright, sunny, crisp, cool morning. I was waiting outside in front of the coffee shop, availing myself of the sunshine, people watching on the street and getting just a little irritated because my friend was late and I'd walked here from my house to be on time. My phone rings. I answer it, and on the other end of that virtual line, this voice asks, "Charles Rathbone?" I said yes, and the voice introduces himself as Dana Chapman. He was calling me to tell me about something called the Hall of Honor at Hamilton High School, and to tell me that I'd been nominated to join the honorees in the hall. Well, honestly, my first reaction was, who is this guy, and is this really real? I'm not really the doubting Thomas type, but I honestly thought he was going to follow up his introduction by saying something like, for $49.95, you can have your name placed on a plaque, and for an annual cost of the same, your name will remain for all the world of Hamilton to see. Can I sign you up? Well, that wasn't what he ended up saying, and when he finished, I was kind of stunned and thought, I better think this through before I said yes. So I said I'd consider the offer, and could I get back to him? He was very gracious, and we agreed to talk or email soon. So I met my friend, drank the coffee, walked back home, and called Sam to check it out, to see if the whole thing was legitimate. And legit it was, and though I can't still quite believe it, here I am. I deeply want to thank the committee for the honor accorded to me by this event. I especially want to thank Sam for all the work in communicating, Sam, you've done on my behalf. And to thank Dana for hanging in there despite my doubting Thomas behavior. I'd also like to thank my family of origin. My dad for being a stalwart, hard-working provider. My mom for teaching me the importance of walking slowly and stopping to smell the roses, and in fact that there were roses all around. And my brother John, who was first born, was always the first one to do anything that an energetic younger brother could watch and learn from. It is wonderful to be back in this building. I actually haven't been back in this building very much. I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure the class of 1960 was the third class to graduate from these spaces, which opened in 1958. And I remember a summer job where I was laying cement out in front. I think that cement may still be the original cement. So I spent my professional career as a teacher-educator. I didn't start out thinking I was going into this field. In fact, my first attempt to become a teacher was quite the opposite. It was a bit of a failure. And here's a little story that I honestly haven't shared very much. I went to college at the University of Rochester. I had lots of interest when I was there, as I did in high school: music, geology, rocks, singing, history. But not once did anyone suggest to me that college might just be the place to pursue one of these things that really interests you. College for me was portrayed as a place where you found something maybe you like to do and not pursue something you were already interested in. For some reason, being interested in something had this big disconnect between what I might pursue in college. So I went to college thinking my college pursuits ought to prepare me to get a job in business. I enrolled in an industrial management program, and then, frankly, I struggled in that major. I did poorly, especially during the first semester of my sophomore year. 2 years later, when I had thought things through a little more clearly, I thought I might pursue my interest in American history at Rochester and go there to become a high school history teacher and a football coach. After I applied to the graduate school at U of R, I was turned down by the dean because my GPA was 0.2 of a point lower than the acceptable level for admission. And I can remember this really clearly. I was just kind of shocked and embarrassed. I left his office, literally hanging my head. As I walked out of his office suite, I noticed in the wastepaper basket a brochure they'd thrown away, advertising a new program in urban teaching at Syracuse University. I plucked it from the trash, phoned Syracuse, interviewed there, and was admitted to a program that would gain me a master's degree and certification to teach. It was just the program for me. We were in schools from day one. We worked with strong, sensitive teachers in very diverse settings, and I learned a ton about all aspects of teaching, including the central importance of relationship. I taught mathematics and social studies for 3 years in the Syracuse schools, and then was invited to join a PhD program, another new program at Syracuse in teacher education, and the rest, as they say, is history. I've often thought about the importance of that rejection at U of R. That and the fact that I found the doorway to what turned out to be my career in a wastepaper basket, quite the strange place. I could go on, there are lots of interesting stories here, but I won't. I do, however, want to be clear about the point I just made. In my life, it took me a long while to learn that life doesn't always happen in straight lines. Of course, it's important to plan ahead, but it's just as important to be ready for that brochure in the wastebasket time in your life. At least that's true for me. I've had lots of opportunities in my life because of my peripheral vision. I'd also like to share 2 additional points of wisdom that have been totally true for me across my career in Vermont, and I think are somewhat universal when it comes to learning. Successful deep learning has a lot to do with being allowed to pursue things that interest you. What found me was a fascination with how people learn that first summer with Mary Jane Patterson, where I stepped in front of a classroom of kids who had failed their grades during the regular school year and had to go to summer school. I quickly discovered that most of them were in summer school because what they had to learn during the year was incredibly disconnected from any real, authentic, and personal interests that they had in life. As a result, they didn't learn much content, but did learn that school was not a particularly friendly place. They were well started on their careers as school failures. Engagement occurs when we're interested in something and actively involved with that something, deeply in your heart. In the case of my first class as 6th graders at Croton Elementary School, they hadn't failed their schools had failed them. And we learned that pretty quickly. The second point I want to make is that our brains are first and foremost social brains. Learning is actual physical change in the brain, and those physical changes are stimulated through interaction with and reflection about objects, places, people, thoughts, and feelings. You can see the brain scans of these little spikes on the dendrites of your neurons that form in periods of rest after a new experience. Learning is brain change. So successful learning has a lot to do with being allowed to pursue things with other learners in small groups that are organized for success. And it's not a new thought. Educators all the way back to Comenius, Rousseau, John Dewey, Lucy Sprague Mitchell, Ron Edmonds, and Lady Plowden have noted this. And neuroscientists who study learning see evidence of these truths in brain scans of learning events. Actual experience is what gives meaning to words throughout our life. And social and physical interactions, real activity with each other and things, are the core drivers of that process. I will end by saying, and looking back on my education here at Hamilton, and thinking about this honor, my classmates, the class of 1960, are the ones to thank for whatever magic resulted in my being here today. I am biased, of course, but I think the Hamilton High School class of 1960 is quite the incredible class, and I just don't mean my classmates who excelled in the more traditional academic subjects. We pushed each other in lots of experiential ways. In my high school glory days, there was always someone better than me in English, in geometry, in music, in track, in typing, in mechanical drawing, and in American history. And those long early morning bus rides, bus number 5, Ed Moulton and Al Carocchio drivers, were the venue to learn about how families and siblings worked together or didn't, and how those experiences taught me about concepts that I later learned were big, powerful sociology concepts. Concepts like power and authority and dominance and control. In all this, and with all these people, I rarely felt defeated, and all I had to do was use that peripheral vision to know that I could do better, whether it was typing or trig or keeping my mouth shut during a school bus confrontation. That these were learning events that stuck had a lot to do with the spirit of this group, the class of 1960. Our willingness to tolerate each other and our enthusiasm for continuing to get together, even after 56 or 7 years, have gone by. To share stories, family lives, shifting viewpoints on life and politics, and most importantly, laughter and perspective on who we are. Stories get better every year. So to my classmates out there, a big thank you for you who were all of you, and a big thank you to you who continue to be for me now. Moments like this, in effect, celebrate all who show up for them. I am deeply honored to be a part of this hall, but I celebrate entirely the opportunity this moment affords all of us here in this room. Remembering who we are reestablishes our connection with everyone else. Remembering who we all are renews and elaborates and extends our connection with who we are together and who I am individually and who each of you is individually. I learn something new about each of you every time we get together in class. That's the beauty of having this social brain which renews itself and gets smarter its whole life. So here's to our all. Be well, stay close, and above all, remember to be you. Joan Walsh Anglin said in a quote, "A bird doesn't sing because it answers, it sings because it has a song." Or, with a nod to Lin-Manuel Miranda, look life in the eye and say to yourself, I am not throwing away my shot. Can you all say that? I am not throwing away my shot.
I am not throwing away my shot.
Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you so much. I'm not throwing away my shot. Raise your hand if you know Tom Blackbird. I get to introduce him. Raise your hand if you know him. Okay. Okay. So, the end of last year, I got a call from a reporter. It says, Dr. Alston, what are your thoughts of Tom Blackbird coming back to coach at Hamilton? I didn't know there was an opening. So I Googled Tom Blackbird. I said, oh man, this guy's got a serious record. I'm going to be in a political pinch. What am I supposed to say? I said, well, we'll certainly be interested in all applicants, and we'll see how it plays out. Now I'm saying, okay, I could be in a political pinch because this guy's got this great record, and there's no opening that I know of. And sometimes superintendents get in political pinches. You understand that, right? Okay. Just so happened, everything worked out just the way it was supposed to be. And here's what I've come to know about Tom Blackbird, who will be introducing the next inductee. He deeply cares about his students, and he helps them reach their best. It looks like basketball at first, but it really is all about life. I'm thankful to have him as part of the magic here at Hamilton Central. And I'm also thankful because he might be one of the reasons why I'm walking today. Let me tell you why. Tom runs these open gyms for the community on Saturdays. And to release some stress, I like to work out with some of the students. And so one day, I'm practicing, a couple of weeks ago actually, I'm practicing with the students, and I'm realizing that this is for people under 20. But I have flashbacks because a long time ago, I was actually good in basketball. A long time ago, like the 80s. And so I see some of the youngsters dunking the basketball, and they're trying, and Tom says, no, try a small ball. And then they're dunking. I said, oh my goodness. I said, give me one. And I'm about to run up, and Tom says, do you really want to do that? Then I said, oh, thank you very much. It's that caring attitude, looking out for people, and going the extra mile that so many people respect and appreciate Tom Blackbird, who will be introducing and doing the introduction for Adam Robert Heck. Mr. Blackbird, would you please come up?
Hope this microphone's going to stay here. Forget it. Before I start, I've grown up in 3 communities, pretty much my whole adult life. Casanova, where I went to high school, Hamilton, where I taught, and now I'm back, and Fayetteville Manly is where I taught. Hamilton is just an unbelievable, special place, and Hamilton Central School is a beautiful place to teach and coach and be around. And we all should be very proud of Hamilton. Now, I know I've got 2 English teachers in the audience, Mr. Gary Ryder and Mrs. Nan Washburn, so you guys can criticize me afterwards, okay? You already gave me thumbs down. Thanks, Mr. Ryder. It's always great seeing you. All right, good afternoon. It is an honor for me to be able to present Adam Robert Heck into the Hamilton Hall of Honor. Adam left us last year on August 27, 2016, at the very young age of 42. He spent every day of his life building a legacy of friendships, impacting everyone he met, and directly affected 2 beautiful communities, Hamilton, New York, and Lansing, New York, with his spirit and his total commitment to whatever he was doing. Let me tell you some things about Adam. He played varsity soccer, varsity basketball, and varsity baseball for HCS. He was a fierce competitor and a natural-born leader. He wrote for the Emerald Press and was an actor and master's music man. He did everything like every typical Hamilton Central student. He was loved by his classmates, his teammates, his teachers, his coaches, and community members. I loved Adam. We developed a special relationship in high school, which carried on through college and throughout his life. We talked thousands of times over the years, and he never called me by my first name, Tom. He always called me Coach. If I'd run into him somewhere, he'd introduce me as Coach, and I said, I do have a first name. It was Tom Blackbird, but Adam only called me Coach. I gave him grief about that. The only other thing I gave him grief about was his college choice, Ithaca, because I'm a SUNY Cortland grad. Adam became a physical education teacher in Lansing. He coached boys varsity soccer, boys varsity basketball, and girls varsity softball. He would become the athletic director and dean of students. He led his teams to league titles, sectional titles, and went to the boys' state Final Four for soccer 4 consecutive years from 2011 to 2014. He was inducted into the Boys New York State Soccer Hall of Fame in 2016. He was beloved by his student athletes, his coaches. He worked with rival coaches, which I'd like to recognize. One of his friends, dear friends, Chip Stewart from Marathon, came up for today, which says a lot. He even was admired by referees. These 3 quotes really tell us about his character and his impact. This is from the Lansing superintendent. Adam was an inspiration. He touched many lives on and off the field, the court, and had a tremendous impact throughout the Lansing community. This quote is from a rival soccer coach. I can tell you he was the classiest and nicest guy. It's a sad day for Lansing. And this quote is a very special quote from a neighboring school, Groton High School, from a senior at Groton High School who received the first Adam Heck scholarship. He was a big presence in our league. Whenever he saw me, he would give me pointers on my soccer and basketball career, my 2 sports. When I found out that he had passed, it was heartbreaking. To be recognized for the characteristics people saw in Adam Heck that they see in me, that means a lot. The most important things in Adam's life were also his sense of humor and the type of jokester and prankster he was. And I'd like to tell you 2 stories that we always kidded each other about. When Adam was a sophomore, he played for my good friend and our JV coach who was here forever, Dave Ride. And during the game, Adam got mad at the referees. Like you'd have played with him, you knew his temper. And this was still his sophomore year, so he hadn't, got up to be a varsity player yet for me. But during the game, he didn't like a call by the referee, and so before he got teed up, Dave Ride knew ahead of time that he was in trouble. He's probably going to get teed up, so Dave took him out of the game, and Adam didn't like that either. So Adam came over to the bleacher and kicked it as hard as he could, and the crack is actually still in the bleacher on the bottom row. So the referee turned around, before Adam could sit down, boom, bangs him with a technical foul. So Dave Wright said, geez, I hope your foot's not broken. He goes, you're out for the rest of the game. So years later, when Adam started coaching, he got his first technical foul as a coach. And so I said, Adam, what'd you do? He goes, I kicked the bleacher. The second story is about Adam a little bit, but it's more about one of his friends who, when I say the name, you just laugh, Mike Hare. Mike Hare was in the class before Adam, and we had basketball practice from 5:15 to 7:15. And Brett Palmetier and Mike Hare live up in the hills of Hamilton, up by the golf course. It takes a long time to get down from their house, especially when it's snowing up there. So we had practice, and all the kids were there, and I looked at Adam, who was one of my captains. I said, where's Mike Hare? And Adam said, who knows, he's probably somewhere. And so anyways, Brett Palmetier made it down in his car. He came down the hill and made it safely to practice. He was there, and Mike Hare still wasn't there. About 5:30, the doors of the gym go flying open, and here's Mike Hare with a ski cap on, ski goggles on. He rode his bike down the hill. And Adam and I, every time we talked over the years, either one of us would have to say is Mike Hare, and we would just start laughing. The most important thing in Adam's life was his family. Adam loved his family the most, and they loved him the most. His wife Beth and two daughters, Alexis and Madison, his mom Nancy, his dad Richard, his sister Stacy, and brother Ryan. He loved you guys, and I know you loved him. And it is with my complete honor that I'd like to have Stacy and Ryan come on up and accept the award for Adam Heck being inducted into the Hall of Honor. Probably better off holding this, and Stacy and Ryan would like to say something.
Well, first I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and for the community to bestow such an honor. Adam, I think really got grounded in this community and identifying where he wanted to go. Whether it was teaching, coaching, and making an impact in the community. Throughout the night, we've heard the word community. And I think Hamilton gave him a great foundation, or maybe a high bar in finding his own community. So I'd really like to thank this community for all the wonderful support and effort in just supporting Adam in his career and his family now. I'd also like to thank and honor his family, Beth and Madison and Alexis, his mom and dad, sister, nieces and nephews, and to see friends from high school coming out, college friends, former teachers, former coaches. It's quite an honor, and I think Adam really valued community, and I think that's why he remained so long in Lansing, because he felt home. And I think this was a great representation of where that feeling first started. So I can't thank you guys enough.
Like Ryan said, and we've heard about many times today, Hamilton is truly a community. As represented with this nomination, we had close to 150 alums that supported this nomination, which demonstrates the great support that Hamilton and that Adam gave back. And speaking of giving back, we have talked a lot about Adam's past and his stories, and Ryan and I also want to announce today that we're thinking about Adam's future in terms of the future of his legacy. And many of the people sitting in this auditorium today, many that are not here, have come together, and we are creating a scholarship and book award to honor Adam's legacy here at Hamilton Central. And that book award and scholarship are going to be given starting next year to a boy or a girl who demonstrates the strength. It's going to be called the Strong as Heck Scholarship and Book Award. And when we think about strength, it's not just physical strength that Adam represented. Character strength is what we're talking about. And the scholarship itself values team, integrity, effort, and leadership. Those are the things when we all think about Adam. In addition to the stories and the laughs and the good times, we think about what he represented in his character strength. Outside, when you leave today, on the table on the left here is some information that his group of friends, family members, Ithaca College buddies have all put together and are working as a team in a community to develop this scholarship for Hamilton. So please feel free to pick up some information and to help carry on the legacy of Adam Heck. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. That's moving. And we've heard three stories of three people who have come through these halls. And Mr. Dickinson, gifted and talented, comes and goes. But we're thankful that you have had the impact on education that you've had, and that you've come through these hallways in such a supportive community. Mr. Rathbone, always check the trash. You never know what jewels are in there and where it can take you in life. Strong as heck. That resonates with me. There are times when you just have to turn to yourself and go inside. And that's what I heard. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our Hall of Honor ceremony. At this point, we are going to have cake and some drink in the foyer. Thank you so much for coming, and we really appreciate you and appreciate you coming out today to recognize 3 Hamilton alum. Have an outstanding rest of the weekend.